That's why people probably are chiming in. Good evening, everybody. How are you? It's Bobby Piton here. We are about to start day number 26. We only have, 339 days to go. It reminds me of a Johnny Cash song, and I've got 39 days to go. What is it? I got 29 minutes to go. I forgot the name of the song, but Johnny Cash is a phenomenal artist. For anybody who hasn't listened to him, you should definitely check it out. Hi, Jules. Hi, Donna. How are you both? Hope you guys are having a nice evening. Thank you for coming in. I'm feeling a little festive. Every time I turn on this mic, I always think of that movie with Robin Williams, where he says, "Good morning, Vietnam." I'm not exactly sure why, but not that I have a mic like that, but it is pretty funny. I do have one. It's just not working. See, it's right here. See, right here. I got one right there. See, it's not set up. Anyways, maybe one of these days I'll get this equipment going properly. But I do not have it all set up properly as of right now. Just too many other things to do, and it doesn't make the top of the list each day. So maybe one of these days it will. Maybe if I was living off of ad revenue for all these broadcasts, maybe I'd get my shit together. Anyways, thank goodness I don't have to do that. So anyways, I'm just, like I said, I'm feeling festive, folks. So, okay, let me pull this up. I just want to make one quick thing and just explain, where we're at and just post a couple things. Well, thank you, Donna. I'm glad I hope I make you guys laugh while you're listening to all this. I'm trying to make it as enjoyable for you as it is for me, because it is enjoyable for me not to take this too seriously. I have talked about it with my wife, and I while I am very religious, I don't follow the very strict, cold, protocol that sometimes seems to exist with regards to religion. I'm not a big fan of it, folks. And I think I'm not, I don't think I'm alone with that. I think there's a lot of us that are like, you know what, we try to do the right thing. We try to do the good thing, but I'm not interested in hearing people tell me how much I'm doing stuff wrong. I don't think any of us are. And, but you know what, we kind of know what we're doing. That's wrong. And we're all trying to get a little better all the time. And sometimes we take a couple steps forward and we take one back, and, the show keeps going on. And so anyways, let's go into Exodus number 2. So we talked briefly about it yesterday with Moses, and I did get an email from someone, which was really nice. They told me with regards to Moses, Jesus, and I think it was Jeremiah, all meeting up. It was like passing the baton, so to speak, and passing the baton to the next guard, i.e. the New Testament. So that's what that whole meeting was about on the mountain yesterday. And so they're not Roman Catholic. They made it clear. And I do appreciate the caveats. People love their caveats. Hey, I'm not Roman Catholic, but I am Christian. I'm sorry, Elijah. And, I do get a chuckle out of that, because I don't really think of religion in those labels. I think of the core message. I think if we all agree with the same Bible, I happen to be Roman Catholic. I do like some of the traditions of it being Roman Catholic. If you asked me which traditions made or break my view of being a Roman Catholic, I couldn't tell you. I wouldn't be like, well, you know what, man, if you take away my rosary praying, I can't be a Roman Catholic. I would never give up my rosary praying. It works for me, folks. And maybe that's what some people call me out as as I'm sure you've heard this. If you're Roman Catholic, you're a cafeteria Catholic, Bobby. And so there's a bunch of us out there who are cafeteria Catholics. We take what we like, and sometimes we we kind of downplay the other pieces of it, and that's all right. And some people that are mad at Catholics because we take certain aspects of things differently than aren't listed in the Bible. Let God have mercy on their soul. Like I said, I'm just having a lot of fun tonight. So anyways, with regards to Moses, Moses ended up killing an Egyptian and burying him in the sand. And a bunch of people have saw this. So then he was a little worried because then the Pharaoh wanted him dead. So then, he took off, he hid for killing this Egyptian because this Egyptian was beating up, he was beating somebody up. So who is he beating up? He was beating up one of his fellow Jewish people, Hebrews, because they call them Hebrews or Jews. Okay? Same, I guess they're interchangeable. And so Moses arrived in Midian. He sat down beside a well. And so he ended up helping some daughters. I think there were 7 daughters, get some water out of the well, and he rescued them from being, I guess they were being attacked or not treated so well. And, as a result, this one of the daughters ended up marrying Moses. Moses married the daughter Zipporah, and that became his wife. And then she gave birth to a son named Gershom. Okay, so years passed, and the king that wanted Moses dead died, but the Israelites continued to complain about, the Israelites were still complaining about being treated as slaves. And, the Egyptians goes back to what we talked about, I think it was yesterday or the day before. The Egyptians were not too happy. Yeah, it was yesterday. They were not too happy about the Jews having so many children and exerting more power and influence over society. So the Egyptians struck back by trying to, number one, kill off all the males, and then number two, treating them like crap. I guess it's kind of weird because they wanted them to leave, but they didn't want them to leave. They wanted their slave labor because they did treat the Jews like slaves, but they were upset when the Jews wanted to leave because of how they were being treated. So it's an interesting phenomenon. I think we see it worldwide. This kind of happens. There's like a love-hate relationship. A lot of people, they mistreat other human beings, and they think sometimes they're better than them. Sound familiar, folks? This is the way a lot of people on the lunatic left feel. They feel like they're superior, sometimes with regards to their intelligence, and as a result of their intelligence that they think is superior than the average person should bow down to them. No joke, folks. This is the way they think. I've been approached multiple times, not multiple, probably dozens of times over my lifetime, trying to be recruited to be a Democrat. No joke. People wanted me to be a Democrat, of all people. And I think they had no idea how religious I was. They have no idea about my faith in God, that we're all considered children of God, and that I could never imagine trying to treat another human being as less because of some perceived differences that I have over other human beings. And some of these differences are positive. Sometimes they're not so positive. Sometimes people don't like to be around me because of my characteristics and nuances. And so, that being said, I always politely just kind of, said thanks, but no thanks. It's not for me. And in fact, what makes you think that you should treat people that way? And I try to delve into what the deal is. And I agree, Celicia. Everybody has their own blessings and their own benefits, and they bring, a uniqueness and a specialness to this experience that we have in this world. Every single life is important. And I've said it once, I'll say it again. Maybe I haven't said it on this, but I know I've said it elsewhere. To be important, you only need to have a meaningful life. You only need to have one moment in time make a difference that changes somebody's life or the world. And that's pretty amazing when you think about it, because if we live 1,440 minutes in a day, and we go through almost 500,000 minutes a year, actually more than 500,000 minutes a year, and we only have to do something for a second of that, so that's, you're talking about 500,000 times 60 is 30 million seconds. So to do something meaningful for like 1 second, 2 seconds out of 30 million, and you can profoundly change somebody's life or many people's lives, is what makes this life so cool. Like the fact that each of us is capable of that at any moment in time. We don't necessarily know when that moment will come. Maybe God does. But it is pretty remarkable that our brains, with trillions of connections between all of our neurons, picks that particular moment at a particular trajectory or moment in time to say, here I am. And it's fascinating. I do think it's fascinating, and I wish that some of these people, and I do pray for them to find the guidance, and maybe if they had a little bit of humility, pick up the good book and the great book, the Bible. And they don't need to read it as a religious text, even if they just read it as a great piece of literature. Maybe they would learn a few stories, learn a few things that would help them have a little more sympathy, a little more compassion, and show a little more humanity toward other human beings in this earth. And maybe that's just something that they just haven't been able to bring themselves to do just yet, but let's hope that they do. Okay. So, anyways, Moses ends up going before the burning bush, and the burning bush is being God. And God tells Moses, don't come too close. And obviously, if there's a burning bush that's talking to you, I wouldn't come too close either. Moses decides to stop. And then, God basically says, I am who I am to Moses. I am who I am. And God tells Moses, say to the people of Israel that my name is Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me. This is my eternal name, my name to be to remember for all generations. Okay. So he goes to the elders of Israel, tells them Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, told them that he's going to help them, lead them out to the land of milk and honey. Right? We've all heard this phrase. This is part of our culture. We've all heard it plenty of times when it comes to politics, that there's a politician who's promising to bring us to the land of milk and honey. This is the biblical reference to that, which is what Moses was told that he would do for following God's will to free the Jewish people from the slavery that was inflicted on them by the Egyptians. Okay. So he does this, and obviously this is Exodus 3. There's more parts to this, but this is kind of where it kind of leaves off, I guess, until tomorrow. And then every Israeli woman would ask for articles of silver and gold and fine clothing from her Egyptian neighbors. And then as a result, as they're leaving town, so to speak, to take as much with them for their journey, to strip the Egyptians of their wealth for the fact that they had stolen their wealth from the Jewish people that were enslaved. Now, I'm not sure if you guys see some of the similarities in our society today, but I sure as heck do. There's a lot of people, not a lot, the vast majority, not like 5%, 10% people, well over 50% of Americans, probably over 80% of Americans. So you're talking about 250 million people have been treated like slaves since the 70s. And both political parties sold this country out. Democrats and Republicans. This is what makes me a little unconventional, because I don't have to worry about losing my tax-deferred status as a religious institution. I can just discuss politics and not worry about my next meal. Anyways, it's kind of going out there to all the priests and rabbis out there that don't want to speak what they see in the world, as well as other ministers and so forth. But, going back to the 1970s, the average American was doing great up to 1971, 72. And then all of a sudden, things took a turn for the worse. This Bush family, which I think is a crime syndicate personally, they helped Nixon get elected. Believe it or not, this guy named Prescott Bush, which is George H.W. Bush's dad and the grandfather of George W. Bush, he put an ad in the newspaper in California looking for someone that would be controlled by business leaders or business owners or something. No joke. And who would respond to such an ad back then in the 50s, right? No other than this guy named Tricky Dick, Richard Nixon. He responded and he showed up. And this guy shows up and these guys have their way with him. And obviously he ended up losing to Kennedy. But then he made his way back into the circuit in 1968 and got elected. Because Lyndon Johnson did not run. I think it was, he decided not to run. Nixon won in 68, and then I think he got impeached in his second term, but not before he set the stage to do a lot of damage, because George Herbert Walker Bush, who was in part of the CIA, he convinced Nixon to resign. So where am I going with all this? How does this tie into Exodus 3, Bobby? That's what you guys might be thinking. Because the Jews were fleeing Egypt because they were being treated like slaves. In this country, there's a few families that have set the stage to turn Americans into slaves. And they did it by using slave labor in China to transition our process of being enslaved on U.S. soil. They convinced 60 million abortions to take place over the past 45 years or so, which would have been 200 million more Americans alive today if this never happened. They destroyed the pride of the family. The so-called Great Society, which was nothing great about it, absolutely devastated and demolished the middle-class Black Americans in this country. They used, 100 years of slavery could not damage their faith in God in their family unit. So keep in mind that even up to the 60s, over 80% of Black couples were couples. They didn't believe in this whole business of just sleeping around, just like any other people, like white people and Asian people and etc. Hispanic people, or South American or Mexican, because people are sensitive on what you say with certain parts of South America, I guess. But all people around the world, for the most part, they believed in monogamous relationships. That all changed with these horrific policies that this horrible, evil person named LBJ put into place. And he's got some really horrible language that I don't even feel like repeating about what he had to say about different groups within our society. And he's an evil person. He's I hope he's rotting in hell, or God even the score with how evil LBJ really was. But to make a long story short, those programs crushed the family unit in the Black community of America, and it went from over 80%, which they couldn't break the will of Black people, even during slavery, and even during segregation. It was 80%. It dropped to like 25%. So they accomplished in maybe 10 years under this program what they couldn't accomplish in 100 years. That's why I'm saying it's evil. And this happened on our watch. When I say our watch, I'm talking about Christians in this country, We didn't see it coming, or maybe we didn't get involved enough. Some people did, civil rights movement, etc. But we didn't see how malicious and evil these policies were. And then they spread from one community to the other, and they've spread across this country like a plague that it is. And this is how they rolled out this methodology to enslave as many Americans as they possibly could and have us be enslaved while we outsourced our labor to another nation that they enslaved, i.e. China and other countries around the world that had even fewer rights than us. So while we thought, wow, that's their problem, not ours, they viewed us both as slaves. I hate to say it. And so the Bush family, they're the ones that brought drugs into the city, in their cities, through the CIA. People, if you guys haven't looked into that, you should definitely look into it. Escobar was bringing drugs into Mena, Arkansas through Bill Clinton. Look it up, folks. There's a movie about it called American Made with this little shoe booty guy named Tom Cruise. I call him shoe booty because he likes to wear shoes that are boots because he's a little self-conscious about his height. And he refuses to work with actors that are taller than him unless he wears these platform shoes. If that's not a sign of a really, sad little human being, I don't know what is. But that's why I call him Shoe Booty. It reminds me of All in the Family. Anyways, so, this guy, I'm saying is the Bushes and the Clintons were in on it this whole time. They created the mess that we're in as a nation. Those families have been doing this to us for over 40 years. Does it sound familiar, everybody? 40 years. Who was wandering the desert for 40 years, folks? Okay, think about that. We went through 40 years of hell on earth because of two families, the Bushes and the Clintons. The Bushes were the ones calling the shots. They basically hijacked our election process through the Chads in Florida, where George Bush, I believe he cheated. His brother Jeb, little Jebber, he's the one, or low energy Jeb, helped create the crime. And then this other traitor out of Arizona named John McCain is the one that set it all up across the country with these machines. This all happened over this 40-year stint. The Clintons and the Bushes, you go back to 1980, before they set the stage with Nixon, where Hillary Clinton was prosecuting Nixon. George H.W. Bush talked Nixon into resigning. H.W. Bush was vice president. They tried to kill Reagan, if you recall. And anyways, that crime family, the Bushes and the Clintons, they controlled the White House, number 1 or number 2 spot for 28 years before Hillary Clinton lost to Barry, which supposedly has some ties to the Bushes, and she became Secretary of State instead, which is the third most powerful position. And then in 2016, no other than a Bush and a Hillary, were trumped by the one and only Trump card, Donald Trump. So anyways, those two jokers were running again, trying to do this. So these are criminal organizations. They're criminal families. I do believe that the United States should move toward banning. There should be a lifetime ban for families. Maybe it's 12 years per family. And they got to skip 25 years or something. But anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. But that's how this ties into Exodus, folks, because they created slavery in the United States, and they did it with a smile. And they basically took the Lord's name in vain. They preached that they were religious people when the whole while they were doing the devil's work this whole time. And maybe it's appropriate that Bush was part of the Yale Skull and Bones Society because, for all I know, it's probably a demonic or satanic organization. I have no idea. I don't know them. I'm just saying that it wouldn't surprise me if they were with just that symbolism alone. Okay, we're on to Matthew number 17. So why do the teachers of religious law insist on Elijah must return before the Messiah comes? Okay. Jesus replied, Elijah is indeed coming first to get everyone ready, but I tell you, Elijah has already come, but he wasn't recognized, and they chose to abuse him. And in the same way, they will also make the Son of Man suffer. Sound familiar? They did. And then, basically, Lord, have mercy on my son. He has seizures and suffers terribly. He often falls on fire and into water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they couldn't heal him. So Jesus responded pretty angrily and said, you faithless and corrupt people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me now. So this is the Jesus that sometimes isn't talked about. You got to remember, the Son of God was in human form, and as human form, he has some human, weakness. I don't want to say weaknesses. We all have these nuances as humans. We have short temper. Sometimes we get angry. Sometimes we're emotional. Well, I got news for you, folks. Jesus was also pretty emotional at times, and he was a little impatient just like us. He wanted the full human experience. And I joke around about that because it's like, if God's going to humble himself to become a human like us, to see what it was like, to kind of, go around this world and deal with all these difficulties, God sending his son said, you know what, you're getting a full human experience here, boy. And sure enough, he did. So anyways, that's what I think about when I read this part of the this part of the passage. So why couldn't we cast out the demon, is what they said. You don't have enough faith, Jesus told them. I tell you the truth, if you had faith, even as small as the mustard seed, you would say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it would move. Nothing would be impossible. After they gathered again in Galilee, Jesus said, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of his enemies. He will be killed, and on the third day he will be raised from the dead. Okay? And so I'm sure we've all heard about the mustard seed. We've all heard about Jesus kind of foretelling what would happen to him. I do know that when Peter said, he didn't want that to happen, I think it's in either this one or a different one, Jesus got pretty upset and said he called him Satan, or doing Satan's work, because to make such a suggestion that he shouldn't go through his fate. Jesus knew what his fate was, what God had asked him to do coming into this world, into this life. You got to remember, part of this whole thing, when Jesus was being crucified, if you look at it from a historical context, for those of you out there, and I'm not saying anybody here that's watching this broadcast, but there's some people that don't believe Jesus was the Son of God. And so let's assume for a second, some of these people that didn't believe Jesus was the Son of God, what did he do to show and help all of humanity become better off? And what I would say is the Romans used to crucify people all the time before Jesus Christ. They used to torture people. They would burn people alive. They would pull their limbs off where they feel all the pain. And they would crucify not just like one or two people, three people, like they did in the story of Jesus. They would crucify entire towns, or when they would go and raid, they would have hundreds of people, if not more, being crucified on crosses like this. So if you think about this, I want you to imagine what it must be like in this world. If our world was like that, where people that did something wrong were tied up, nailed to a tree, basically immobile, and left to starve to death, to dehydrate, to die, and then have birds pick them apart while they're alive, vultures and so forth. I mean, I'm not sure what you think hell would be like, but that sure as heck does sound like it would be hell on earth, that these people did this to fellow human beings. And they did it because they thought like liberals, these lunatic lefties, that they thought less of other human beings. Jesus came in to the world through the Father and said, I'm going to show them through example how ridiculous these things are in the world, that they're not treating everybody as the children of God that they are, that we're all children of God, that he's going to undergo all that pain and suffering to live the example of what hell on earth really was. So Jesus helped bring that entire era to an end. And, this is one of the guiding principles of the United States and the West, that no cruel and unusual punishment, folks. Where do you think that came from? Like, people are like, wow, that sounds great. Well, it also came from our Judeo-Christian values, that, we as a people, we as a society, we as fellow children of God should have mercy on our fellow human beings. Now, I understand, with regards to the death penalty, I happen to think that there are some crimes that are committed in this world that society has a right not to show mercy on. That's my personal belief. We don't need to be as pious as God. But there's only a few crimes that I feel that way about. Any individual that harms children, sexually abuses children, kills children, that type of crime. I do not believe that they deserve any mercy, and I do believe that they should be treated as criminals, like crimes against humanity sort of thing. But that's my personal belief. I don't set the rules for society. People that, so anyways, that's the one thing that I do think anybody who engages in human trafficking or sex trafficking and sells human beings' souls, they should be treated as war criminals and treated as such, with the harshest penalties possible. But that's, those are the few examples that I view. We as a people, we as a society don't need to be as pious as God. We can basically, follow the story of Job and take that approach to deal with evil that is among us. So anyways, so this was kind of interesting, is before he had a chance to speak, Jesus asked him, what do you think, Peter? Do kings tax their own people they have conquered? They tax the people they have conquered. Well, then Jesus said, the citizens are free. However, we don't want to offend them. So go down to the lake and throw in a line. Open the mouth of the first fish you catch, and you will find a large silver coin. Take it and pay the tax for both of us. So that's an interesting concept, that kings don't tax the people they have conquered. And, if you think about our society and, what taxes should be used for, right? There's certain things that are common goods. Like we all agree, like you have insurance on your home. Why? Because if your house burns down, you don't want to be on the hook for the whole amount. And maybe you don't have the money to be on the hook for the whole amount. And so having insurance to make sure that your home can be rebuilt if a fire were to strike it makes sense. Well, national security is kind of like that. We need national security to protect all of us, protect our home, protect our property, protect our children. And so that's a tax that we have to support, kind of like an insurance payment. Okay, so that's one. We all want justice. We want, fair courts. So making sure we have a fully functional court system is critical. Okay, so that's one other tax. So if you kind of look at the key things that all of us human beings in the United States would agree on, there wouldn't be a whole lot of taxes being collected if we went back to that. And so I was really hopeful that the Supreme Court would dismantle the administrative state. I'm not as hopeful now after seeing how corrupt even the most recent justices are. that might have been compromised by this crime family called the Bushes. And so I'm not sure how it's all going to play out. I'm hopeful that something does change, but I do think that Supreme Court justices should not be able to serve more than 17 years. That's my personal belief. I wish we'd sign a constitutional amendment. FDR didn't serve more than 16 years, I think. Maybe he went into his fourth term. Maybe he served, I think, maybe 13 years. But I don't think a Supreme Court justice should serve more than 17 years, and I would even be comfortable no more than 12 years, 3 4-year terms, or 2 senatorial terms. There's 300 million people in this country. We don't need the same 9 jokers calling the shots indefinitely. I disagree with that notion. But anyways, going back to this whole concept of taxes and Jesus, what he's saying, we the people should start to demand that we don't pay homage for systems, for programs that steal our spirit. They steal our energy. You have to remember, when we overpay in taxes, which we are, we used to pay 4 cents out of every dollar. So every $25 we earned, we'd give $1 to the federal government. Now, for every $100 we earn, we give the government 22 cents. So we're giving them, on average, 5 times as much. So we earn 5 and we give them 1, more than 1. Before we would earn 25 and give them 1. So they're taking 5 times as much from us, and we lose as a result of that. We should fight to take that back and say, you know what? We're going to follow the great book. Jesus basically says, a free people, a free nation should not be stealing the citizens' money the way it is in this country. And if we all put our faith back in God and we look at this logically, we would agree that we do not need to pay for people that don't create for themselves and have the dignity and the decency to do so. If other free people want to do that with their dime, go ahead. But they shouldn't have the right to take our money from us through theft with this insanity that they've been pitching to us for, I guess, 100 years now. We need to take it back and go back to the start, which is why I said God first, 10 Commandments, U.S. Constitution, cut all this crap, and let's go back to the fundamentals. That's just my 2 cents. Okay, we're on Psalms 22. My God, why have you abandoned me? Why are you so far away when I groan for help? Every day I call to you, my God, but you do not answer. Every night I lift my voice, but I find no relief. I think there's a lot of people that feel like that right now, that we feel like, this country, there's a lot of people praying, a lot of people want to see good things happen, and I think it's important that we keep doing that, we stay focused, but there's also an element of it, we all have to step up and do our part. We have to live what we want to see. We have to do it with our children. We have to take control of our schools, get involved, get on the school board, make sure we take over the process of making sure our children are educated properly. Get them off their damn phones. Go over the Bible with them. Sit down and teach them the core principles of what made not just America great, but Western society great. They need to learn by example. And there should be more dinner time at more dinner and eating meals and so forth. And if you don't know what to say and you don't want to talk about it, find some things online. There's plenty of resources online to share with your kids and explain this stuff. There's great movies now about the Bible that walk through the Bible in terms of the stories. Some of them are on YouTube, others are on other media, and I think you should do your best to try to find stuff that resonates with them. And so, anyways, that's what I kind of think of when I hear this, is that do something. We're not meant to wallow. We shouldn't wallow. We need to act. You are holy, enthroned on the praise of Israel. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you rescued them. They cried out to you, and you were saved. They trusted you, and you never disgraced. But I am a worm and not a man. I am scorned and despised by all. Everyone who sees me mocks me. They sneer and shake their heads, saying, "Is this the one who relies on the Lord? Then let the Lord save him. If the Lord loves him so much, let the Lord rescue him." Okay, so let's think about this for a second. This is that pity I'm talking about. Nobody is a worm. Nobody is not capable of saving themselves and doing what's right by their family. Each of us is made in the image of God. If we're made in the image of God, that means we have the power of God within each of us through our spirit. Get up and do it. And, so don't buy this crap with somebody wallowing in this psalm and waiting for someone to be their saving grace. We all have to do it. We all have to step up and save ourselves, save our families, save our nation. And we all need to act. Yet you brought me safely from my mother's womb and led me to trust you at my mother's breast. I was thrust into your arms at my birth. You have been my God from the moment I was born. Do not stay far from me, for trouble is near, and no one else can help me. My enemies surround me like a herd of bulls. Fierce bulls of Bashan have hemmed me in. Like lions, they open the jaws against me, roaring and tearing into the prey. My life is poured out like water. All my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax melting within me. My strength is dried up in sun-baked clay. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You have laid me in the dust and left me for dead. My enemies surround me like a pack of dogs. An evil gang closes in. They have pierced my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. My enemies stare at me and gloat. They divide my garments among them and throw dice for my clothing. Okay, so let's think about this. There's a lot of connections to this. To what? This is kind of what happened to Jesus, folks. They ripped him apart. They tortured him. They flayed him. They sold his garments. They played dice for him. They did all this horrible stuff. And guess what? He still rose from the dead. His spirit was never dead. His physical form might have left this world and died, but he rose from the dead. And it's extremely important that we all realize that as well. We are not our bodies. Let me say that again. We are not our bodies. Our bodies are nothing more than temporary. They serve a temporary function for our spirit. Our spirit, our soul is eternal. It is not part of this world. It is living in this world. We're experiencing this life in this physical form to learn a bunch of lessons and hopefully to become better spirits for what God has planned for us. That we're here to maybe make it a little easier for people to go through this life, to experience it, maybe experience some joy. Sorrow is not always a bad thing either. Those emotions and those feelings have valuable lessons in them. And I think that that's what we should focus on. You don't need to focus on the human element of the pain and suffering aspect of it. Focus on the spiritual growth that occurs from pain and suffering, that occurs from really shining a light into other people that you come across. And I think we all have that ability. And I think that that's my takeaway from the story is God is Jesus is basically saying, look, he went through this. He's telling you need to look through it and move past it as well. And, he put his money where his mouth is. He actually lived it. He did it. He went through all that pain and suffering on our behalf, and to show us that there is a way for us to shed this connection to thinking that we are just part of this body and so forth. So let's go on. This is Proverbs 5. So now, my sons, listen to me. Never stray from what I'm about to say. Stay away from her. Don't go near the door of her house. If you do, you lose your honor, and you will lose to merciless people all you have achieved. Strangers will consume your wealth, and someone else will enjoy the fruit of your labor. Wow, this is a really powerful story, folks. I'm going to tell you what I think when I'm reading this again, because I read it earlier, but now I'm reading it again. I think it means a lot more. In the end, you will groan in anguish when disease consumes your body. You will say, how I hated discipline. If only I ignored all the warnings. Oh, why didn't I listen to my teachers? Why didn't I pay attention to my instructors? I have come to the brink of utter ruin, and now I must face public disgrace. Holy cow. Proverbs 5. So what I'm thinking about when I'm reading this is I'm thinking about people that cheat in a relationship, in particular that break their marriage vows. Maybe you read this too. Maybe you don't. I'm not exactly sure. Never stray from what I'm about to say. Stay away from her. So when people cheat, okay, if you do, you will lose your honor, which you will. You will lose the respect of everybody. Strangers will consume your wealth. Yes, if you do the wrong thing for your spouse, all the work, all the effort that you've done to create a family, create a unit together, build up, that can all be lost. And then strangers will gnaw at it and take away the resources from your spouse or take away your resources. Someone else will enjoy the fruit of your labor. One of the things I tell people, and once again, since I advise people with regards to finance, I've only done this if people ask for my opinion. I don't usually volunteer it, folks. It's a very sensitive topic, but sometimes I've come across some people who have done very well for themselves, and some people, have made $2 million, $5 million, $10 million in 1 year, and some people are worth a lot of money. And I've run across the whole gambit. People that are very happy with making $50,000, $20,000 a year, students, to people making tens of millions, or if not 50 million or more. And what I will tell you is, when some of the ones in the ones when they start making seven figures to to 10 million or whatever, they work a lot and they're nonstop and they're driven, and sometimes they disregard their family. They think they can outsource it. This is a normal type of occurrence I've seen time and time again. So when this happens to these folks, where they're not there for their wife, they're not there for their kids, etc., one of the ways I always bring them back, when I do talk to them, if they ask me for my advice, is I said, look, you can keep doing what you're doing. Nobody's going to stop you. I'm not going to try to stop you. Your wife's not going to try to stop you. Your kids can't stop you. You're not going to listen to your kids. And but here's what's going to happen. You're going to make a lot of money. You're going to keep going, and you're going to go from being worth 5 million, 10 million, maybe worth 50 million. And then one day your wife's just going to get up, and she's going to take 25 of that 50. She's going to take 25 million right off the top. And then if you have a few kids with her, she's going to take child support as well. And there's going to be some young guy or gal, I guess, but it's usually men that I talk to about this. There's going to be some young guy that the wife is really going to like. And he's going to enjoy all your money because you weren't there for her. So I hope it was worth it. So I want you to think about that, because if how long would it take you to make that 25 million that you lose? Or how long will it take you to make that, whatever the number that they were worth? I would tell them that all the time. I say, well, how long will it take you to make that money back? So now when you sit there and you tell me you can't make 5 hours a week available, 10 hours for your most important constituency, so to speak, because they like to think in business terms, the most important person in your life, that's there as your partner, that's there as the mother of your children, I think you're full of shit. Like you really are mispricing what that hour is worth. And so anyways, that's usually it shakes them up a little bit, and they don't really get mad at me, surprisingly. Nobody's really started yelling at me when I put it in those terms. But I just say, look, how much time does your wife want a week? What does she want? 5 hours, 10 hours uninterrupted time? Let's figure out what the hourly cost of this is going to be. And I just calculate what it's going to cost. And anyways, it's pretty it's a pretty good it's a pretty good eye opener. But when I think about this here with Proverbs number 5, it really hits home here with this story that I've shared with people over and over again. How I hated discipline, right? People hated the discipline of what they needed for their life. If only I had not ignored all the warnings. Their spouse kept telling them, "Hey, man, you better change. This isn't going so well." And why didn't I listen to my teachers? So people are trying to teach them and tell them what they had to do to fix this, and they didn't listen. They didn't pay attention to their instructors. And now I've come to the brink of utter ruin, and I must face public disgrace. You have to remember something. There's a lot of truth to the following saying. You've heard the saying, it's better to have loved and lost than never loved at all, right? Well, let me tell you what I've observed with people with money. It's better to have never have made any real big money and then have lost, than have made it all and then lost it or lost half of it. The devastation to people that accrue wealth when they lose it all or lose a significant portion of it is one of the worst death spirals that you can ever witness. A lot of people do not do well with it. It's the closest thing to, a living suicide, so to speak. That's the way I would describe it. They feel like they committed suicide, but they're still here. And anyways, that's just been my observation. I could just be way off. Maybe I just met the outliers. Maybe I didn't. Maybe this is the way a lot of people feel. I really don't know. I haven't tried to reach out and find people that disagree with this sentiment. I'm just telling you what I've observed. And frankly, I don't really have any attachment to what I observed. I'm not trying to judge them either one way or another. I'm just trying to explain to you some of the things I've observed, and maybe it makes sense and you can relate to it from your own stories and things that you've seen. Maybe you're like, I have no idea what the heck you're talking about, Bobby, but I understand it does sound pretty interesting. It is an interesting little observation if you really had it. But anyways, so that's that. So with that being said, I just want to say thank you all for joining me this evening. I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying going over this in passages, and I do enjoy the comments. And I'm learning a lot. Some people have been emailing me, and I've been reading those emails. So I appreciate all the feedback and thoughts, and so forth. So I just want to say, God bless you. God bless your family and friends. God continue to bless the greatest nation in the history of the world. I love all of you. I could feel the love that you send to me through prayers, and I try to send them back to you as well with my thoughts and prayers. And may peace be with everyone. And if for some reason you don't have the peace that you desire, I do know that if you pray and you continue to put God first, that peace will definitely find you. And you'll find the peace that you're looking for. And continue to just, get the word out and pray with other people, pray with your family and friends. And I know that we'll continue to grow and strengthen our spiritual muscles, so to speak. So with that, have a wonderful evening. Thanks again.